So hello and welcome to this new moon reading from May in 2023. We have 3 cards to look at. You lovers of the tarot. God, I'm getting bored of saying that. The 5 of Cups comes to share the pessimistic view of our tendency to look to that which is broken, fallen, dark, disastrous, traumatic, painful, and downright bad. And following this one card that we're going to dive into, I'm going to show you the 3 cards straight away. We have these 2 major arcanas, the Devil and the Judgment card reversed. So let's take a look at this reading. This 5 is how we hold our energy down, how we look at what is lost, what is broken, what has failed, and how we focus on what makes us feel not so great. That will be fear, that will be guilt and shame, that will be self-doubt, that will be sadness, disappointment. This is a card of pessimism because this is the part of us that when we see a cup that's fallen, and it'll be some trigger in the world, and when we see that trigger in the world, it's an automatic excuse to feel bad. There might not be one of them, there might be 3 of them. There might not be 3 of them, there might be 300. But there will be 3 reasons for us to feel bad about something. Excuses, reasons, justifications. And whatever they are in the world, and we've all got some of them, they will be our triggers to negative emotions. And it doesn't matter what those negative emotions are, we will feel them. And a natural reaction is to say, whew, that's not so great, I don't like that. And a natural reaction is to avoid it and walk the other way or not look at it and think that the lesson is about how we can not have so much of that in our life instead of how we can not react this way in our life. And so we protect ourselves and we cloak ourselves in darkness. And the cloak in this figure is one of the biggest things in the picture because we don't want to see something. We don't want to be seen, which is the same story. And we're afraid quite often for our negative feelings to be seen as well. So sometimes this is an anger which we don't want the world to see. Sometimes it's a shame and a guilt that we don't want the world to see. And a lot of the time it's a fear. So this tendency to not want to be seen and to want to hide and to want to protect ourselves comes from our early upbringing when we learn to focus on the negative because it can help us. When mom or dad or brothers or sisters are in a bad mood, we need to be alert, because if we are alert, then we can adjust our reactions accordingly. We can go and hide in our room. We can avoid that more delicate emotional interaction where it's not going to be pretty, because we've seen it before, and we can hide from it. We can protect ourselves from it. We can tiptoe and walk on eggshells or rice paper, and we can practice not bumping into, not provoking any more conflict than we need to experience. And the more alert we are, the more focused we are on the negativity around us, the more likely we are to avoid more traumatic events. And so we train ourselves to be focused on it. And it's a protective mechanism, and it helps us. It helps us stay safe. So we learn to hide some of our negative emotions from other people, because that definitely gets a negative reaction. We learn to be super attentive to negativity in the world, because that saves us from bumping into it in uncomfortable ways. And all of this teaches us how important it is to focus on the negative. And we learn this really early. We learn this when mum and dad can't deal with our temper tantrums. So we judge temper tantrums as being wrong. And we won't like them in other people either, because we'll get trained not to like it. And it's not a comfortable energy to be around. And a lot of our emotions that are reactions to the world will have this tendency to look at the world and say, that's why I'm feeling a certain way. And will stay very protected. And if we bump into any of the triggers in our lives, which are going to trigger our negative emotional reactions and make us simply feel bad in whatever way that is, bad, sad, afraid, guilty, then we need to protect ourselves from feeling this way. At least that's what we tell ourselves. And we tell ourselves that the best way of protecting ourselves is to avoid what it is that's triggering us. And as we avoid that trigger, we'll find it very difficult to see the sadness that's inside of us. We'll feel it, but we won't see it. We'll feel conflict inside of us. We'll feel a whole range of negativity. And instead of attributing it to something that's not quite working inside of our own body and minds, we'll attribute it to whatever the trigger is in the outside world. That's the problem. Look at how it made me feel. Look at how obviously wrong it is, and it's natural that I feel this way. And yet what we don't see is our tendency to be attached to and addicted to looking at and feeling certain emotions. To be hyper attentive to anger might save our ass on occasions, but at the same time, it'll make us look for angry things and angry stories, and we'll probably bump into a whole bunch more of those angry stories just because of our attentiveness towards it. And it's the same with any of those darker emotions. We might be so afraid of sadness, of feeling sad, that we're hyper alert when anybody else is sad around us, and then we'll attract it. We'll call it in. And it will probably call in another experience that will justify our traumatic reactions towards sadness. And we'll be even more afraid of it. The devil wants us to get naked to see our shadow. The devil wants us to own these addictive patterns, these addictive habits that we have, so that we can be naked enough to see how easy it is to take off the chains we hold onto unconsciously to feeling afraid, to feeling guilty, to feeling sad, to feeling ashamed. The devil is upside down in this picture because the more we focus on pessimism, which might have saved our ass at one time when we were younger, the more difficult it becomes to actually be honest enough with ourselves to say, hey, it's me who's creating this reality. It's an idea or a belief inside of me that is the foundation of what my emotions are running with right now in my life. Our emotions are just a reflection of our thoughts. And sometimes we're not going to be aware of how we think. We're not going to be aware of the subtle and invisible beliefs that we hold in our subconscious. But we are going to be aware of the emotions that come from them. And if our inner voice is saying, you're not good enough, then we're going to manifest something that's going to help us feel bad about ourselves and feel unworthy and feel ashamed, or sometimes even feel guilty. If we're telling ourselves it's not safe to be around this energy, then we're going to practice being afraid. We're going to practice being afraid so that we can be hyper alert to that energy and avoid it at all costs. But it's the belief that we are not safe, which is the birth of that fear. And then that fear needs to be felt by triggering some attractive relationship that's going to bring it up for us. If we want to get naked, we're going to have to take the cloak off, and we're going to have to see ourselves and our own darkness and understand that this is our ego playing stories in it with our lives, not as the wonderful trickster. This is the devil inside of us that is wanting to be seen. It doesn't want to be in the shadows. And so here we are hiding from ourselves when the real solution to turning around and seeing the two cups and the white bridge that's going to take us to our joy and happiness, the solution is within owning the beliefs which create the feelings, which create the experience and attract the relationships that are triggering all of our stories. When we're so focused on the dark without owning it, when we're so focused on what is wrong in the world, or what hurts us, or what is painful to us, or what is broken, or what is disastrous, and when we're so focused on how bad the world is, and we don't own our own brokenness, and we don't even want to see our own brokenness, we won't hear this call. This is a call of rebirth after the ego has well and truly died, after our personal fears and our personal self-doubts and all of that restrictive holding back energy that makes us so fragile as individuals. When that dies, when that fragility dies, when our fear and our stubborn addictions to holding on to the darkness dies, and we allow ourselves to melt into the universal waters of life, and we're reborn again, or we're resurrected, then we can hear the call of the angel, the call of God, the call of source, the call of the light that wants us to wake up and say, hey, we're here as this communal, collective, growing, healing, learning, understanding, sharing, loving, bathing in the joy and the light of the universe. And we want you to join us. But in order to do so, we have to embrace that darkness. We have to know that the devil's message is not so that we can promote more fear or practice being afraid more, so that we can simply own the consequences of those beliefs that keep us trapped and keep us tied like a ball and chain to our past, that stop us from dying to the past and being born into the present moment, being born into the here and to the now, which is what this card represents. Born into that purity where we can hear the voice of the angel calling and saying, hey, wake up, it's time to realize who you truly are. And there's no doubt a lot more in these three cards that I shared just now, and love to hear any comments that you might have about this little new moon share and how it touches you or affects you in some way. And as always, I wish you all the best.